Welcome back to Season 2 of the 5-Star Counsel Podcast, the 5-Star Counselor Bootcamp. Over the next 6 weeks, in 12 episodes, I'm taking you step by step through my service framework. Every episode focuses on one key aspect of service, not only tackling common misconceptions about that aspect, but also giving you clear takeaways and tactical exercises for you to do on your own. This will help you develop service in your firm so that it works for you, your employees, and your clients. I'll help you build the firm clients rave about because you, your clients, and your employees are happier, leading to more referrals, repeat business, and 5-star reviews. Let's get started. What does it mean to have your process? How do you make sure that everyone on your team knows what to do and when to do it? Today, we're getting into the weeds on how you can set up your practice so not only do you know what's going on with your clients, but your staff and your clients know where they are in the process. Now, as the practice leader, you have to not only identify the vision, align the resources, and then be accountable for getting everybody to the results or your destination. But you've probably heard a lot about having a process. Heck, everybody's favorite new management book, Traction, even spends some time talking about having your process. The problem is, it's kind of hard to figure out exactly what they mean. It's a hard concept, and I'll admit, it took a while for this to gel in a way that made sense to me. When I first saw it in the book, it did seem pretty obvious. Sure, we're going to have our process. Now, for me, I can just rattle that off. That means I meet with a client, I consult with them, I provide them with a recommendation, we draft documents, and then they sign them. Sure, I know what that means. The client can probably understand that. But this isn't the map. This is just an oral tale I've told them of what's going to happen. They're likely to forget what's going to happen and when it'll happen. We haven't even brought in my staff. Do they know what to do? Every step seems so simple. I'm going to meet with them. I'm going to provide the clients with a recommendation. We're going to draft documents, and then the clients are going to sign them. But that doesn't really get into what's happening with every client at a given time. It also doesn't address what needs to happen by everybody on the team. Who needs to do what and when. So when you hear having a process, it seems really simple. This is the order and the steps that we do things in. But Traction seems to make it pretty easy. So easy, in fact, that they spend 13 pages or so on this chapter. It's one of the shortest chapters in the book. And they spend more time talking about every other process and not the actual process that you, in your firm, needs to go through every time you have a client. So what we want to think about is, what are the actual stages of climbing the mountain with your client? What should you be doing for every client every time? Now, the reason we want to break this out into stages is so you know the specific way that your firm implements the work that you do, and it'll be different from every firm that you've ever been at, and even the firm next door. I own my firm. I've been here for 4.5 years, and I worked at 3 other firms before I got here. The way that we do things now is different than all 3 of those other firms, and that's fine. The important part is we know how we do it and how it's going to get done and who's going to do that work. We can then convey that to our clients and say, hey, we're the ones who know how to do this. Yes, we're going to file motions. Yes, we're going to take depositions. But how do you know that somebody on your team has actually prepared for that deposition? What are the steps that they need to go through? If we take a step backwards, one of the bigger things that I hear firm owners complain about is there's so much going on, I have no good way of knowing everything that's happening to every client. If you envision your practice as a forest, with each matter or each client being a tree, you as the practice owner need a mid-level view. No, you don't need to get up close and personal with each tree on a weekly basis to know exactly how the bark is. You also don't need the satellite picture from low Earth orbit showing you not only your forest, but the ocean and the lake just across the stream. What you need is a mid-level view. Think of it as being in a hot air balloon about 1,500 feet above the forest. You should be able to pick out individual trees and see what's going on, but you don't need to go into deep depth on any one issue. Every week when you have those client status meetings, you need to make sure that you're getting enough detail and you're also not missing out on any particular client. Every firm I'd been at has done this. Every week, we're meeting and going through all the clients. The problem with these status meetings is that there's rarely any structure to it. Not only do you not know who's going to talk next, you don't know who's accountable, and you don't know where everybody is. So, what we're really trying to do in this episode, as we develop your process, is know how can you as the owner get a good handle on where all of your clients are? And what does this mean? How will you be able to be sure everybody's going along and knows what needs to be done? How do we stage out every bit of your process? From start to finish, how do we know where they are? The problem with running client status meetings is that they rarely have any structure. Or, put another way, they rarely have a structure that's useful for everyone involved. I've seen them run in one of two ways. First, you'll either run it by going through every client alphabetically. This means you're jumping around from clients who are in different stages of the matter with you. If you have a litigation practice, this may mean you're jumping from client A. Aronson, who is doing pre-trial briefing, to B. Borenson, who is doing their initial discovery meeting with you to figure out what's going on. While there's nothing inherently wrong with this, the problem is everybody is jumping around and you're not seeing the common patterns at the different stages in everybody's practice. The other way I've seen meetings run is that everybody will be arrayed around the conference table and you go one by one through all of your clients, and then the next person next to you go. Again, we're jumping through all of these clients, regardless of where they are in the process. So what's the better way? Well, first, we've got to start thinking in stages. When I'm working with my clients, I describe it as we're climbing a mountain. We start with our strategy session, where the client, my staff, and I all meet. We're there together. After that initial meeting, we're then moving on to our initial recommendation. This work belongs to my firm. First, the person who is in the meeting with me, my co-pilot, will be responsible for pulling together all the notes from that meeting and presenting an initial draft recommendation for me. The stage after that is that I need to review and send that initial recommendation to the client. From there, we're waiting on the client to approve that recommendation. Once they've approved the recommendation, the stage then shifts back to us. But it's not just on the firm as a whole. Our paralegal is the first one responsible for that. She's responsible for drafting the initial set of documents based on that recommendation. Once she's drafted that, the associate attorney will review those drafts and then send them on to me. So, just going through the first part of the process, what I want you to hear is that we've got different stages, and at each stage, we have one person who's responsible. That one person knows exactly what they need to do. In the initial meeting, we know what needs to get done. We need to walk through all of the issues that are there for our clients, and then come up with an initial recommendation. Everybody needs to be there. Client, staff, and me, the practice owning attorney. After that meeting, my co-pilot on the meeting, whoever it was, whether they're a paralegal, an associate attorney, or somebody else in the firm, they're responsible for assembling the notes so we can send it out. Then it shifts to me. I need to review and get that out. We then send it to the client. That stage is on the client. By taking the large stages that clients will understand, meet, recommend, draft, and breaking them down into smaller, finer grained stages, co-pilot drafts the recommendation. John reviews and sends the recommendation. We can know who should be working on things and in which order. Now, the individual humans may change, but the responsibility will always be there. We know the stages as they progress. The reason to do this is that we want to know how things should progress, and so we can know when and how to do things. If we go back to my time at the Four Seasons, there were different stages for somebody even arriving at the hotel. It wasn't always with one person. So when a guest would arrive at the hotel, they'd be greeted by somebody at the front door. It might be the doorman, it might be a valet, it might be one of the bellmen. Whoever it was, regardless of title, they knew that their job was not just to take the bags out of the car, but to make sure they got escorted all the way to the front desk, where the front desk agent, or the front desk manager, or the night manager, or whoever it was who was checking people in, would then be responsible for taking that guest and getting them checked in. At that point, responsibility shifted from the person who greeted them at the front to the person who was checking them in. As part of that check-in process, I knew I had 21 things that I needed to do to get them completely checked in within our standards. It wasn't the bellman's responsibility. It wasn't the overnight cook's responsibility. It was me, as the person checking them in, responsible for making sure they knew where they were in the hotel and how to get around. And so as you think about process in your firm, you need to be thinking about it in that level of detail. What's the first thing that happens and who's responsible? What do they need to get done before it can be handed off to the next person? When it gets handed off to that next person, who are they and what do they need to get done? When you shift it back over to the client, what are you looking for from them? So part one of this has been figuring out the stages of each of your clients. Once you do this, you'll know where different clients are and you'll be able to stage them out and know, here, these are the 10 clients we have where we're waiting on John to approve the initial recommendation. Here are the 5 clients we're working on where we're waiting for them to get back to us. Here are the 3 clients where we're waiting on the initial recommendation to come out of the paralegal's hands. Whatever it is, what we're trying to do is organize people by where they are. For each of your matters, you should know exactly where the client is and what needs to be done before the next thing happens. But this isn't just for you as the practice owner. This is so that everybody who works for you knows exactly what needs to be done. By putting together the stages in your particular process, what you as the practice owner will get is that organization, the accountability, and clarity. But it's not just for you. Your employees will also get it because they'll know where clients are and they'll know what needs to be done next. Things aren't just in your head. But the other side of this is your employees also need to know how much is on their plate and what things should come first. So you also want to make sure that you're tracking what is priority and what is being prioritized for any particular person. This is a lot to juggle. And what I've done and what we'll be sharing with you in this episode is an Excel file where we use this in my firm to track not only who is responsible, but what priority needs to be done. As we put this together, you'll start by staging out each of your processes. For me and my firm, we have a process for our initial strategy sessions. We have a process for our planning clients, and we have a process for our probate clients. The initial strategy session clients have 6 stages that they go through. We're thinking about sending the engagement letter, getting paid, sending them their homework, getting ready for the meeting, and then finally having that meeting. The clients really only see wait for the meeting, have the meeting. But internally, we know who needs to be responsible for each of those tasks. For our planning clients, there are 7 large stages that we think about. Initial recommendation, approving the recommendation, drafting documents, approving documents, scheduling the signing, and then ongoing care. But it's not just those 7 stages. We're breaking those down internally into finer grained stages, allocating that responsibility to a different team member. This makes sure we know who's responsible and what's on their plate. The last piece is figuring out the priority. Are we waiting for the client? Then we want to lower the priority. Is this something that needs to get done tomorrow? Then that priority is higher. We use a 0 to 5 priority scale to know exactly how hot something is on somebody's plate. Ultimately, you'll need to figure out what your practice looks like and what you need to be doing in yours. What I want this episode to do is help give you the ability to see that mid-level view of the forest that is your practice. Where are all the clients? How can you keep track on all of them and know that everything's being done for them in the right order? Thanks so much for listening. You can find more info on us and get your free white paper on client service at 5starcouncil.com. You can get in touch with me at john@5starcouncil.com. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe wherever fine podcasts are found and leave us a review wherever you can.